What if I told you there's a place in America where the ground remembers? Where stones whisper names no one's spoken in 1,000 years? Where forests grow over forgotten cities? And deep beneath the quiet lakes there are carvings, paths, and even bones that don't belong to any known chapter in history. You're about to hear the true story of Michigan's most haunting mysteries. Sacred carvings hidden in sandstone, copper mines abandoned overnight, an underwater stone road that may predate the Ice Age, and one chilling question echoes through every site, every shadowed grove, every mound swallowed by time. What did they know that we've forgotten? Stick with me to the end, because the last part of this journey will change the way you see the land beneath your feet. This isn't folklore, this is the story they didn't teach you in school. And it starts not in a textbook, but in the hush between wind and stone. The woods are listening. You didn't come here for answers. You came because something called, not loudly, not urgently, just a quiet pull in your chest, like the gravity of a memory you never lived. You're deep in the woods now, somewhere in Michigan's thumb, not far from the Great Lakes, but far from anything that makes noise. The trees feel ancient. They lean in. You sense them observing. The forest floor is deep with pine needles. Each step sinks softly. The birds have quieted. Even the wind seems to pause. You're alone, but not entirely. You stop walking. You breathe in and out. The air tastes of moss and cedar. Damp, cool, but alive. You feel presence, not fear, not danger. Just awareness, like energy lingering between the trees. You close your eyes. You sense movement underfoot. A pulse, something waiting. They say this land is older than time. Before highways, before towns, before maps name the places, before even recorded history. You've read that in 1881, a wildfire swept across these woods. The flames were destructive, but they cleared barriers. When the smoke lifted, people discovered something unexpected. Etched figures on sandstone, petroglyphs buried under centuries of underbrush. Not by accident, not by natural forces, carved by human hand, hidden until the forest forgot, but the stone didn't. You continue along a narrow path. The canopy thickens. Dappled light dances over ferns. Shrubs crowd close. The air cools. You pass a faded wooden marker, barely readable. No official plaque, nothing grand, just a quiet invitation. You already know where you are. This is the Sanilac petroglyph site. The Anishinaabe name is Ejibai Dek Asin. It means written on stone. You step into the clearing. It's subtle at first. A low slab of sandstone, partially covered in leaf litter. Nothing dramatic. Yet when you look closer, the surface reveals something extraordinary. Figures etched into rock. Men, animals, abstract patterns. Over 100 carvings across a slab roughly the size of a small room. Not recent, not delicate, but weathered, eroded in places, yet still clear. The stone is fragile, the carvings vulnerable, but enduring. You crouch down, let your hand hover just above the outcrop. You don't want to touch it yet. You're mindful, respectful. The air stills, the carvings feel alive. Not in movement, but in intention. Each line a whisper from the past. Each symbol a message locked in time. You find one figure larger than the others, taller, more defined. A man, carved with firm lines, a bow drawn, muscles tensed, the arrow pointed. They call him the bowman, his gaze fixed forward, his posture vigilant. The arrow points to another carving. Not an animal, a symbol you can't place, a spiral, a wave, a guidance arrow. You stare. The soul of the figure seems focused, purposeful. You whisper. What were you aiming at? The forest breathes. Leaves rustle faintly above, and nothing. You turn slowly. There's no presence, only quiet shadows, but you feel sure you are seen. You ease your weight back on your haunches. You breathe slowly. Your breath becomes part of the quiet. You think of the ancient person who pressed that bow shape into stone. Hands rough, yet precise. Stone tool firm in grip. Each strike intentional. You wonder, did they think someone else would see it? Or were they carving for themselves? For their community? For the spirits? It's strange. You came with curiosity, wonder. But what fills you now isn't curiosity alone. It's longing, a subtle ache. Not for a past life, but for connection. The carvings don't demand attention. They invite it, like an unfinished syllable waiting for another voice. The wind shifts again. A gentle hum, almost like vowels sung in silence. Vibrations in the air, too soft to hear, but felt in your limbs. Your breath stalls. You sense a presence deeper than the trees. Not threatening, not urgent, patient. You exhale, slowly, and something in the stone seems to exhale with you. A response without words, a ripple in time. You realize this place isn't a museum exhibit or just an archaeological site. It's a living memory, preserved not by insurance, but by intention. You shift your weight. The forest resumes its minor sounds. A twig snaps somewhere distant. The sun shifts, shadows retreat, yet you feel you've awakened something in this spot. Something that existed just beneath the surface. Waiting for someone to listen, you breathe again. The air tastes sharper now, clarity. You plant your hand gently on the rock, not resting weight, but connecting. A gesture. The stone is cool, smooth in spots, rough in others. You resist pressing, because touching might break something delicate, something spiritual. You whisper again. I hear you. Your voice is small, but it fills the clearing. The breeze responds with a sigh. Leaves rustle. The forest opens a space for you. You step back, slowly, reverently, not wanting to disturb the silence, not wanting to leave, but knowing you must continue the journey. You walk away. Each step feels lighter, strangely, or heavier with awareness. The path curves uphill. The forest begins to thin. Light returns. Birdsong resumes. Tentative. It's as though the world is waking up again. But behind you is a clearing. Quiet now. A rock slab with ancient lines. A message etched into stone. Unearthly and human all at once. You realize the forest isn't just listening. It's answering, and it's inviting you to keep going. The bowman and the spirit. You return the next morning. The forest greets you differently. Softer. Familiar now. The shadows are thinner. The trail crunches underfoot. But it's not jarring. It's music. You follow it like an old rhythm. The kind your body remembers before your mind does. You arrive back at the petroglyphs. You pause before the clearing. Not from fear, from reverence. You feel something sacred in the light. It's angled just right this time. It spills across the sandstone like water. And then the lines begin to shimmer. You step closer. The bowman is still there, frozen in his eternal aim. His bow drawn, arrow stretched, tension tight in stone. But beside him, another figure stands. You missed it yesterday, or maybe it only revealed itself now. The spirit being. It's taller, broader, the outline more surreal than real. Head crowned with rays or horns, it's unclear. It isn't human, but it isn't not human. Either, you can't place it. It resists logic, but it welcomes wonder. You kneel again, a bit closer this time. The spirit being's posture is calm. Unlike the bowman, there's no aggression here, just presence, a watchfulness. You feel it studying you, not with eyes, with memory. You trace the shape with your gaze, from the head to the shoulders to the extended arms. Each line sharp, deliberate, like it knew what it wanted to say. You don't touch it, but you feel its echo humming beneath your fingertips, and something begins to form in your mind. A story not with words, but impressions. The bowman was not hunting, he was guarding, protecting, a boundary, maybe a place between worlds. The spirit being wasn't an enemy, it was what waited beyond, a force of transformation, a threshold guardian, or a guide. The carvings, you begin to realize, aren't scenes, they're sentences. Each one part of a larger language, not spoken, not written, but felt. You look further. Across the stone, there are turtles now, birds, wavelines and spirals. Each symbol ancient, yet alive. They pulse with energy. Or maybe that's your heart syncing with something older than breath. The Ojibwe called this written on stone, but they also said the carvings are teachings, not decorations, not art. Lessons left behind by those who dream deeply, saw visions, understood silence. You sit now, fully, cross-legged, listening without expecting, and slowly, the meaning unfolds not through logic, but intuition. The bowman is a lesson in vigilance, a call to watch, to notice, to protect not just the body, but the spirit. The spirit being is a reminder that power doesn't always look like force. Sometimes it looks like light, sometimes like shadow, sometimes like both. And then a thought slips in, quiet but sharp. What if this wasn't just carved memory? What if someone or something is still here? You feel the question linger, not threatening, just watching. You look around. The forest hasn't moved, but it feels closer. You speak out loud now, softly. Who are you protecting? And you feel the weight of centuries shift. Not to answer, but to acknowledge you asked. You rise. You begin to walk the perimeter of the rock, slowly, with care. Each symbol greets you, some familiar, some unknown. You don't need to name them all. You only need to respect them. You notice a pattern. The carvings near the bowman are sharper, more intact. The ones near the edge are fading. Erosion. Time. Or maybe they were always meant to vanish slowly, like stars before dawn. You learn something in that moment. Not all stories are meant to be remembered in full. Some are designed to fade, so others can rise. You feel the truth of that, like a thread pulling gently in your chest. You circle back to the spirit being. This time, you kneel in front of it, not to analyze, but to honor, and you whisper, I see you. The wind lifts then, a small gust. It moves the leaves. It brushes your cheek. It moves nothing else, only you. A reply. You don't know, but you smile. You begin to rise again. You look at the carving one last time, and you feel not closure but continuation. This story didn't end here. It started here, and now you're part of it. You step back into the woods. The trail winds like memory. The trees no longer silent. They murmur, not with words, but with presence. You carry the bowman and the spirit being with you. You didn't just visit a sacred site, you became a witness. And the story continues. Fire and ashes. The path back from the petroglyphs feels different now. Not shorter, not longer, just slower. Like the land is asking you to stay in step. Not rush, not run. Just breathe with it. That night, you light a small fire behind the cabin. Nothing grand, just enough to warm your hands. The flames crackle softly, flickering against the stacked logs. You sit with a blanket draped over your shoulders. The scent of smoke, old wood, and damp earth wraps around you like memory. You stare into the fire, and slowly, the stories begin again. That was the year it all came into view. Not by discovery, but by destruction. A massive forest fire swept through Michigan's thumb. Flames so fierce they erased miles of brush and timber. Entire towns left in ash. Fields scorched. Skies turned red with smoke. And when the blaze passed, something strange was left behind. The fire had burned away the overgrowth. What emerged was stone, a slab, etched and silent. That was how the Sanilac petroglyphs came back into human awareness. Not because someone found them, but because nature burned away what had forgotten them. You sit with that thought for a while. Fire as a revealer, as a cleanser, as something that strips away time. And yet, what the fire gave, people almost took away again. You read about what happened next. Tourists came. Locals, curious, clumsy hands. Some traced the symbols with chalk, others with knives. Some just stepped on them, unthinking, unknowing. Pieces began to fade, lines blurred, stories lost again, only now by carelessness. Not all wounds are violent. Some are quiet. The site suffered, and yet it endured. Some carvings are now unrecognizable. Some are scars where symbols once stood, but some remain, almost defiantly. You imagine the stone beneath the flames that year, heat licking the forest floor, trees falling like bones. And yet, under all that those carvings waited, like voices hidden under skin, maybe fire didn't just uncover them, maybe it tested them, and only what was meant to last remained. You sip from a warm mug, tea with a hint of pine and honey. The steam curls up into the dark. The fire pops once, sending a little spark into the air. You watch it rise and vanish. You think of how fragile things are, and yet how strong. You read that Michigan's Department of Natural Resources now co-manages the site. They work with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. Elders hold ceremony there again. Songs rise through the forest. Offerings left with reverence. The carvings are being reread, not with academic coldness, but ancestral warmth. You like that image. Elder sitting beside the stone, not explaining, but remembering. Maybe remembering is a kind of prayer. The fire dies down a bit. You shift your blanket. Feel the chill settle in. The woods behind you grow quiet. Not empty, just still. You remember one more thing you read. Before the fire. Before even settlers came, this site was part of something bigger. A network. Petroglyphs in Wisconsin. In Ontario. In Minnesota. Always near water. Always along the old paths. What if they weren't random? What if they were messages along a spiritual road? A sacred map etched in stone across the Great Lakes. And Sanilac was just one stop. You imagine ancient travelers walking those trails. Generations ago, feet on dirt, canoes on rivers, stories passed not in books, but through breath, through carvings, through presence. The fire dims again. You add one more log. It flares, then settles, like it heard the story and wanted to stay awake a little longer. You lean back, stars above now, a few visible between the treetops. They look different tonight, not distant, closer, like they're listening too. And you wonder, was the fire a tragedy? Or was it a doorway? Did it come to destroy? Or to reveal? You don't have the answer. Maybe it's both. Maybe some truths arrive only when the old world burns away. And maybe what's left, if it survives, is meant to be kept. Not in books, but in memory, in voice, in quiet. You stare at the embers, then close your eyes. And for a moment, you swear you hear footsteps. Not near, but not far. Just walking, through time, toward the fire. A map without names. You lay out a worn paper map on the table. Your finger pauses over Michigan, near Sanilac County. You know this landscape. You know its whispers now. You trace the lake shore onto Ontario, Minnesota, Wisconsin, then across bays and rivers. You draw invisible lines. Your breath slows. There are at least 5 sites like Sanilac, etched stones tucked into forests, each near water, each in a place where people once traveled by canoe, each holding symbols you can't fully read, but you feel their language. You feel its weight. A petroglyph near Thunder Bay, another etched on stone in northern Minnesota, a curve of waves in Wisconsin. Each carving speaks, even if the words have vanished. You see a pattern emerge, a lozenge shape, a line drawn as straight as a sunset horizon. You imagine someone centuries ago walking those lines, traveling beyond your memory. You feel the pulse of possibility. Maybe these carvings were not random. Maybe they formed a network, a sacred itinerary, a map without labels, a language of place. You breathe a little faster. Curiosity expands. You remember the words of an archaeologist. These carvings might mark ritual stops, but we can't prove it, not without context. And you remember an elder's reply. They're not markers, they're memories. We move through life singing the earth. You close your eyes. You imagine that world. Canoes slicing through mist on water, turtles and birds carved into stone, people pausing at each site, singing, offering tobacco or pipes carved from stone. They understood the world as alive. The land is speaking back. You lean closer to the map. You feel scales shifting in your mind. Modern logic meets memory. Trade networks appear. But these are spiritual trade routes moving ideas, songs, prayers, not just goods. You feel the puzzle stretch beneath you. You see the big picture. You sense the network humming under your fingertips. Each site is a heartbeat, pulse points across a landscape that was once sacred. That still is sacred. You feel a chill of excitement, of reverence, and quiet awe. You think of Sanilac again, the bowman, the spirit being. Now they seem less isolated, just one stop on a longer journey, and maybe one chapter in a book still being written. That night, you sleep under canvas. The woods hum around you. You dream of lines across water, of carvings lighting green waves under moonlight. You hear voices, but not in words. In rhythm, in meter, in patterns. At dawn, you wake. You press your hands into the map. You say softly, "I'm coming!" You fold the map gently. You pack it away. The next stop is not far. Royale waits. You walk outside. The air is crisp. The forest sighs awake. The map's lines pulse in your mind. You feel the land breathing memory beneath your feet. You step forward into the day, into the journey, into the network, and you realize this story isn't just about places. It's about bridges between worlds, between time, between past and promise, the hidden tools of Royale. You board a ferry at dawn. Fog drapes over Lake Superior like a grey blanket. You feel chill air against your face. Water laps softly against the boat hull. There are no cars on this island, no roads, no traffic noise, just the vast green open. You hold your map in your lap, but the silence is its own direction. Royale appears in the mist. Message in stone, a wild land. You step off the ferry onto a rocky shore. Mist curls among cliffs and pines. The world narrows. You feel weight shift underfoot. You breathe slow. You step inland. The trail is rough, Mud and pine needles form a tapestry under your boots. You follow markers with a muffled glow. Then the trees open, and you see it, not a monument. Not polished, just a flat patch of earth. A hole, 20 feet deep. Rough edges, copper veins veining the walls. You crouch at the edge. The hole is cold. Dark, echoes at the bottom. You peer in. You sense time, 1,000 or 5, or 7,000 years. Someone using only stone tools. No metal, no machinery. Hammerstones made from lake rock, smoothed by water and centuries of strikes. You think about that. You kneel beside scattered stones. They look almost like ordinary rocks, but not quite. Smooth faces, spherical bits, evidence of use. You pick one up, heavy in your hand, warm from your body. You sense the weight not just in pounds, but in history. You hold it gently, stone-made tool. Used to pound copper out of a rock, day after day, year after year. And yet no one knows their names. Not recorded, not in books. Their existence only survives in these pitted stones. You walk along the edge of another pit, shallow now, filled with moss. A crater among trees, scars of extraction. You see blackened rock fire-hardened surfaces, carbon lines etched by flame. Those flames were deliberate. Ritual maybe, wood-dried stone, rock cracked, then hammered. Natural science calls this the Archaic period. 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, but you don't feel academic about it. You feel reverence, hands driven by spirit, souls tuned to land, mining not for profit, but for purpose. You notice copper bits at the bottom of some pits, a glint of metal, tarnished by time. You reach in, pull a shard, cool in your palm. It shines. You stare at it, terrified and calm at once. Copper is metal, you know, but here it feels sacred. Some artifacts found in the area are not tools. They're shaped forms, moons, thunderbirds, ornate shapes, not practical, ceremonial. The metal becomes more than copper, becomes a message. You feel a truth. Copper was not just dragged from the earth. It was invited, honored, treated with respect. But you have a question. Why extract so much? Over 500,000 tons. You sketch that number in your journal. It doesn't add up. You stand in quiet. Lake sounds behind you. Mist clings. You consider the scale. No civilization points to using that amount. Not even an advanced one. What happened to it? Where did it go? A guide once told you. Artifacts from Lake Superior copper have been found in Ohio, the Mississippi Valley, even as far south as Mexico. Traders once carried it, but not nearly 500,000 tons. You press your lips. Something is missing. A mass disappearance. A vanished treasure, or a pattern not yet seen. You wander further, discover another flattened pit, then another. Hundreds, thousands, they say, all along the ridges, the copper-rich veins exposed near water. Hands drop tools here, left tacit messages carved in weight. You stop in a clearing later. Connecticut pines circle you, sunlight filters. You close your eyes. You breathe in. You hold the guide stone in your palm. You feel a pull. A message not spoken. You imagine the ancient miners, canoes pulling ore across rivers, campers making fires, offerings made before digging, songs chanted before each swing of hammerstone, copper revered not as resource, but as spirit metal. You open your eyes. The forest exhales. At dusk, you sit on a rock ledge overlooking the lake. The copper shard lies by your side. Campfire light of evening touches the forest edge. A loon calls across open water. You feel the island is alive, not just green mass, but memory and motion. You think of the bowman and spirit being. You think of Sanilac as one node. Now you stand at another, connected. A path you walk goes beyond maps, touches deeper rhythms. You rise, you stretch. The air is cooling fast. You collect your things. You take one last look at the deep pit, the empty hollow filled with possibility. You whisper, I hear you. An echo of water shifts. You carry the copper shard in your pocket, not to own, but to remember. You walk back toward the ferry landing. The map in your pack pulses in your mind. More places called. The journey is far from over, and you are not the same person who first stepped onto this island. You step onto the ferry. The lake unfolds. Mist parts slightly. The island recedes into forest and unknown. You exhale. There's work still to do. More questions to ask. Your hand brushes the copper shard. You breathe slow. And you think maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they just carried their truth somewhere else. You look back once. The green ridge stands silent, then disappears in mist. You turn forward. The journey continues. The copper that vanished. You wake before sunrise. The copper shard warm in your pack. You step outside and feel the chill of morning air. The lake lies still beneath pale sky. You breathe in cold mist. You're alive on Royale, but your heart remains with that carved stone below ground. You carry the copper shard like a promise, a question. Where did this metal go? You retrace your footsteps to the pits. The trail is grey in dawn light. Silence is thick. Each hole you pass feels like a memory paused. You stop at the largest pit you visited yesterday. It's deeper still in morning shadows. You kneel by the rim again. You stare down, searching for answers. Archaeologists estimate over 500. 000 tons of copper was mined here. All by hand, no metal tools. No machinery, just hammerstones, fire, patience. You wonder who carried that copper and where did it go? You walk further, along ridges, among moss and shrubs. You find greener grass growing where shallow pits once lay. Nature reclaiming scars, yet the scars ripple beneath. You sense the weight of absence. You climb to a higher ledge overlooking forest and lake. You touch your journal, sketch a rough map. You write, copper spread far beyond the island. You remember trade routes stretching south. You recall reading about copper found in Hopewell mounds as far as Ohio and Mississippi Valley. But even that doesn't account for the scale. You sip cold water from your bottle. The air tastes of earth and memory. You look at the lake. A loon calls, soft and lonely. You feel the emptiness of the pits mirrored in that cry. You kneel again before a pit filled with water. You peer into the reflection. Trees, clouds, then your face. You whisper, who took you copper? Who carried your shine away? You recall tribal legend. Elders say copper came as a gift from spirits. It had life. It had intention. It wasn't just metal. It was spirit metal. You remember the words. We sang to the copper before we touched the stone. Copper was treated with respect, not as resource, but as relationship. You think, if copper was sacred, maybe they didn't keep it. Maybe they returned it, buried it, sacrificed it. Spirit offerings, because the land gave it and it must be honored. Modern theories propose widespread trade. That copper spread along networks for rituals or tools, but you feel a deeper possibility. Not just trade, but ritual circulation. Copper moved to be offered back into the earth, into mounds, into rivers, into art, into ancestors. You sit on moss near the pit. You hold the copper shard. You run your fingers over its tarnished surface. Once, it may have been polished bright. Once, it was shaped as a moon or a thunderbird. You think of how it might have looked in candlelight or sun. You look west. The sun is rising. Light breaks. It touches the water like a mirror flame. You feel hope. You feel sorrow. Woven together. You close your eyes. You imagine ancient hands shaping metal, touching stone, enlarging veins of ore. Later, burying metal under mounds. Songs rising from drums. Smoke curling towards sky. Prayers to spirits. People humming beneath the stars. You breathe it in. The scene melts into now. You open your eyes. Green trees, blue sky, water gently rippling. You pack your journal. Wrap the copper shard. You walk down the slope. You return to the ferry landing. The island still sleeps. Mist rising. Birdsong tentative. You step on board. The ferry starts. You weigh your pack. Your mind heavy with questions. But not empty. You're carrying something now. More than copper. More than memory. An invitation to listen deeper. The island recedes. Green ridges and fog. You see the place where so much copper was removed. And yet you also see why it might have disappeared. Not whisked away, but offered away. Returned. Let go in reverence. You breathe. The lake expanse lies open before you. You wonder which path to follow next. The mounds of Nile's call. Burial sites. A different kind of memory storehouse. Maybe copper returned there. Maybe carvings echoed this island's spirit. Your fingers close around the shard under the seat. It feels heavier now. Not as metal, but as question. A reminder. A story still unfolding. You take a final look across open water. The ferry pushes onward. You exhale, and the lake exhales too. As if in agreement, the story isn't over. It's changing shape and invites you to keep listening. The sacred metal, You don't leave the island unchanged. Even now, as you drive the long, tree-lined roads of the Queen Peninsula, you can still feel the echo of Isle Royale beneath your skin. The copper isn't just buried in rock anymore, it's buried in thought. It hums, quietly, like a memory that hasn't decided what it wants to become. You stop along the roadside. Step out. There's no marker here, just trees. Moss, wind, but nearby, underfoot, lie the remnants of ancient pits copper mines older than almost any human structure on this continent. You kneel, fingers pressing into the earth, and for a moment, you sense them again. The hands that worked this land before maps, before records. The hands that called copper by another name. They didn't just dig. They didn't just extract. They approached the metal like a spirit. The Ojibwe say it came from the earth as a gift, sacred and alive. It wasn't simply mined. It was sung into the light. You walk further. The woods open slightly. There's a clearing. In the center, stones nothing grand, just a circle of them, weathered and half covered in leaves. But it draws your attention. You sit quietly nearby. You feel something still breathing here. You remember stories copper-shaped not into tools, but into crescents, into thunderbirds, into serpents and masks, symbols of power, of spirit. These weren't items of war or work. These were artifacts of belief, worn in ceremony, buried in mounds, offered back to the land. And maybe that's the reason so much copper is missing. Maybe it was never meant to be counted. Maybe it was used for things we don't measure anymore, for dreams, for offerings, for maps not made of paper but of starlight and soil. The wind rustles above you. You hear birdsong. Far off, a branch breaks. Nature doesn't seem to mind your presence, but you still whisper, out of respect, because somewhere in this quiet land, people once sang as they shaped copper with stone. No smelting, no fire forging, just rhythm, stone hammers, and time. They heated rock with flame, then cooled it with water breaking open veins like they were unlocking secrets. It wasn't conquest, it was conversation. You imagine the glow of a ceremonial fire, figures standing in a circle, the copper laid in the center, catching the light. Perhaps they believed each piece held a story, a memory passed from the earth itself, a message meant for those who could listen. Maybe you're trying to listen now. You pull out the shard from Isle Royale, turn it in your hand. It looks ordinary in daylight, but in your mind, you see it again under firelight, warm, glowing, alive. You recall a line from an old oral tale. We do not take copper, we ask it to come with us. That feels like truth, a worldview woven not in ownership, but in relationship. You rise, brush off the dirt. The trail bends east. You follow it. The path is soft. Pine needles beneath your boots. You think of the archaeologists, the skeptics, the fringe theorists. So many views on this land, so many opinions on the copper. But out here, under these trees, none of it feels academic. It feels personal, because there's something beautiful and sorrowful in realizing we've forgotten how to ask the land for permission. You wonder, what did they pray before the first strike of stone? What songs did they sing when copper finally came free? Who carried it back? And how long did they kneel in silence before shaping it? You reach another pit, this one filled with still water. You sit by its edge. The surface reflects sky, branch, and your tired face. You lean forward, whisper again, just in case someone or something is still listening. And perhaps it is, because in that moment, the breeze lifts slightly, the light shifts, and you feel something very old pass by, slow and calm. The spirit of copper isn't gone. It's just deeper than we remember, waiting for those who come not with machines but with memory. As the day fades, you turn back to the car. The road home feels distant now. Your journey is only halfway. There are mounds ahead, legends waiting. But tonight, as you rest in a small roadside cabin, copper will sleep beside you not as metal, but as story. And when you dream, you won't be alone. The mounds beneath our feet. You find yourself in Niles, Michigan, a quiet town, brick storefronts, tree-lined streets, a steady hush of small-town life. At first glance, there's nothing here that whispers of mystery, but that's the trick, isn't it? The most extraordinary places rarely announce themselves. You drive slowly along the edge of the St. Joseph River. The current moves smooth and silver, peaceful, but beneath the calm, something ancient stirs, something older than the sidewalks, older than the map, older than names. You park. Step into the grass. There's a small hill in the park, gentle. Rounded, green. Kids run up and roll down, laughing. Dogs tug at leashes. No one seems to notice, but you do. That hill, it's a burial mound, built hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, shaped by hands that believed Earth could hold memory, spirit, even eternity. You walk closer, feel the hush that surrounds it, just under the surface of sound. Not silence exactly, but reverence. The kind you find in libraries, or old churches, or in the pause between lightning and thunder. The Hopewell people built these, or the Adena, or maybe both. Their names are modern labels, what they called themselves. We don't know, but they left these behind. Not buildings, not weapons, but mounds, earth-shaped with intention. Geometry rooted in ceremony. They weren't random. These mounds aligned with stars, with solstices, with the cycles of life and death. Some were conical, others oval or rectangular. Some were clustered, others stood alone. But all of them carried purpose. You sit on a nearby bench. Watch the light shift through the trees. Imagine this space. 1,000 years ago. No cars, no street lamps. Just firelight, chanting, the low beat of drums. Figures moving in quiet procession, carrying the dead, or the sacred, or both. The mound becomes more than dirt. It becomes story. You remember the artifacts found here? Pipes, pottery, copper, obsidian from far-off mountains, seashells from distant shores. They weren't trinkets, they were offerings, each one placed with care, with ritual, with belief. This was no backwater outpost. Niles was a hub, a spiritual center, a place where people gathered from far and wide, a crossroads of trade, of ceremony, of cosmology. And now, it's a playground. You don't judge. The children laughing nearby aren't wrong. Joy is a kind of honoring too, but you still feel the weight of what's beneath your feet. You remember the old account settlers in the 1800s writing of massive mounds, some 20 feet tall, some arranged in patterns like constellations. Most of them are gone now, leveled for farming, paved for roads, forgotten, but the land remembers, and some stories survive. Among the Potawatomi and the Ojibwe, stories of sacred ground, of places where the veil between worlds thinned, of ancestors watching, still, of sickness falling on those who disturb the mounds, of lights flickering in the woods, of whispers and dreams. You stand, walk slowly to the base of the mound, lay your palm on its side. The earth is cool, firm, alive. Some researchers say there was once a complex here, circles, squares, causeways, maybe even an astronomical observatory, a great ceremonial center, lost beneath houses and highways. But beneath that theory is a deeper question. Why build with earth? Why shape memory into hills? Maybe they believed in cycles, that death wasn't the end. That spirit moved like the sun, disappearing only to rise again. Maybe they knew something we forgot. You glance around. A runner jogs past. A couple eats sandwiches on a picnic blanket. None of them know what lies beneath. But that's okay. You do. And that knowledge changes everything. The mound is not just a relic. It's a heartbeat, slow, steady, waiting. You wonder, how many elders died before their stories could be told? How many songs were buried without translation? How many ceremonies were held in secret after the old ways were outlawed? You don't know, but you feel the ache of it. As evening falls, the park empties, the shadows grow longer. You sit alone near the mound, let the silence stretch, let the memory settle, and just for a moment, you imagine footsteps soft, rhythmic, circling the hill. You imagine flickering torches, a prayer in a language you'll never understand. But the feeling you know, you nod once, then rise. You don't take a photo, you don't mark it on a map. Some places are better carried in the heart, because the past isn't buried. Not really, it's breathing. And when you listen, it speaks. Tomorrow, you'll head north, toward the dunes, toward a legend shaped not in earth, but in sand, a story of fire and water and a mother's love carved into a hill. But tonight, sleep knowing that beneath your feet, the dead still dream, and perhaps they're dreaming of you, the Sand Mother. You leave Niles before dawn. The morning mist drapes the Sainty. Joseph River in pale silver. You drive north. Highway lines blur beneath your tires. Forests flank your route. The rhythm of travel slow, purposeful, You carry memory forward 1 step, 1 mile. Eventually, you reach the shore of Lake Michigan. The water stretches blue and deep. Wind carries salt and sand. You step onto dunes that rise like dreams sculpted by wind and time. Each grain beneath your feet feels alive. They call this place Sleeping Bear Dunes, not because bears slept here, but because an old story heals this landscape. A story of love, loss, vigil, all carved into sand. You climb a dune. Your feet sink in soft sand. Wind whistles across the ridge. You pause at the summit. The lake unfurls before you, vast and silent. You close your eyes. You breathe in cold air. You breathe out history. The legend begins far across the water. In what is today Wisconsin, a mother bear flees a wildfire. Her 2 cubs follow her into the lake. Cold waves crash. Paws slip. Struggling, they swim. She makes it ashore. They vanish. She climbs this dune. She watches. Days turn to nights. Seasons change. She waits. She never leaves. When she dies, the Great Spirit honors her devotion, turns her into a giant dune. Her cubs become the 2 islands, North and South Manitou, floating nearby. Stand here now. Let the wind whisper. Let the dunes shift beneath you. You sense something maternal in the silence. A presence. Not mournful, not accusing. Just watching. You walk along the ridge. Sand burns faintly beneath midday sun. You think of the bowmen, the copper pits, the mounds beneath Niles. Now, sand. Memory sculpted over centuries. Every step a heartbeat and story. Local youth come and go. Walk with dogs between rooftops and trails. They do not know the dune is a mother transformed. They do not feel her vigil, but you do. You climb another crest. This time, closer to the water. Wind picks up. It tugs at your hair. You lean into it. The sand hums at your ankles. You imagine the mother bear's spirit shifting beneath the surface, endless patience, eternal sorrow transformed into sculpture. You pause. Lift a handful of sand. Let it slip through your fingers. Each granular fall glitters in sunlight, like tiny stars lost and found. You imagine each particle a memory, a drop of grief, a grain of love. You walk on. A shallow depression appears ahead. Some say it's shaped by wind. Others whisper a better story. They call it the mother's cradle, a place she sat, waiting. Some nights, visitors say they see her silhouette in moonlight broad back, muzzle outlined in shadow. Some claim they hear a low rumble, not thunder, not wind, something deep and alive. You stand there as the sun sets. Hue edges shift from gold to lavender. Light scatters across dunes. The lake turns from grey to silver. You feel stillness deepen. You whisper the legend aloud. She waits. The wind echoes your words. Leaves rustle faintly. The dune doesn't shift, but your skin tingles. You sense affirmation. You look across the water to the Manitou Islands. She watches them still, mother and cubs, turn to land and sea. They remain fixed on the horizon, a family remembered. You sit down. Let the sand cradle your thoughts. Your legs stretch along the slope. You inhale the air, feel the wind, hear the silence. The dune is generous in memory. Strangely, you don't feel sadness, not exactly sorrow. Anyway, more reverence, more softness, an ache shaped by love, not absence. You lean back, breathe in peace. You remove your shoes, sink bare soles into sand. Cool, slightly damp. You let the world shift beneath you. Nothing moves except your breath and the dunes themselves. Slight ripple, soft sigh. The land breathing. You gather driftwood. Light a small fire behind a dune ridge, away from paths. Sparks rise like fireflies in dusk. You hold the shard of copper in your palm again. It catches flamelight. Faint glow. For a moment, you imagine copper in ceremony here, offering to the mother bear spirit, an artifact of mourning, a token of permanence shaped from impermanence. You let the flame go low and die. Ash drifts into evening air. Night descends, cool. You draw your blanket around your shoulders. Stars spill across the sky. The lake reflects constellations. You close your eyes. You drift. You dream of a mother bear, standing at the water's edge. Head high, waiting, a lullaby wind blowing through dunes. You sense thousands of voices in the sand, voices of ancestors, of travelers guided across land, across lakes, across time. When you wake before dawn, the dunes are silent, the lake not yet stirred, the sky pale before sunrise. You rise softly. You step to the top again. Look east, the horizon glows pale pink. You whisper into the dawn. I will remember. You walk down the dune, each step touching memory, shaped into sand. You feel changed, more connected to story than you expected, more ready to listen. Tomorrow, you'll dive beneath the lake at Grand Traverse Bay. But today is as profound. The dune is the story. The land is grief sculpted into memory. And you are witness. You walk away. The sand shifts behind you, soft procession. You look back once. The ridge still there. She still waits. You exhale and walk forward along your path. The ones who stopped digging. You return to Royale before sunrise. The ferry cuts through the placid lake in near guaranteed grey light. You carry a backpack inside. The copper shard from earlier warms quietly against your ribs. You feel a pull like you're drawn back by its absence. Not of metal, but of missing weight. You walk toward the largest pit. Rows of them stretch across the ridge moons carved into earth. Stillness here doesn't feel empty. It feels loaded, suspended between memory and silence. You pause beside the pit, the rim sharp with frost. You kneel on damp moss. You look down. This pit is deep, shadowed. Ancient, fire-blackened walls reveal carbon lines. Flames once licked these stones, dried them, cracked them, hardened them, then hammered shine of copper from living rock. No blast, no furnace, no smelter, just light, just touch. And then they stopped. Modern science dates the mining's end to around 1200 BCE. Not slow, not fading, abrupt vanishing of tools, of pits, of smoke rings rising in dawn. You still, imagining the last hammerstone blow. Then silence. You walk along the ridge, each pit a bruise in the land, each one unfilled, overgrown now, but visible. An echo of extraction, an echo of ritual. You step between them, each hole trembling with absence. You think, when they stopped, why? You recall theories. Scholars say depletion, trade disruption, threat, but none mention why no other mines followed. No new pits opened, not slowly, not elsewhere. The work vanished as if completed, not burned out, fulfilled and then forgiven. You think of the legend passed down among some Algonquian folks. They speak of non-human beings, giants or spirit workers who walked before humans, mined copper free from time, then departed when the balance broke, vanished, leaving the earth hollowed. The metal still there, but the miner gone. You shiver slightly, not from cold, from the weight of that possibility. You kneel, rest your palm gently on the rim of the pit. The edge is smooth, rounded by millennia. You press your palm into the stone. You don't feel warmth, but a hum beneath your fingertips, like distant chanting, muted by time. You breathe deep. You close your eyes. You allow images to weave in your mind. Hammerstones raised in firelight. Songs and voices that no longer speak English or French or Spanish. Words not written in any book. Carried in breath, in gesture, in action. You open your eyes. The pit gazes back. Empty, wide, still. Not a grave, not a ruin. A threshold, a marker, a question tacked into solid earth. Why did you leave? You pull out your journal, sketch a circle. Dot marks around, you draw arrow lines. You write. Copper 500k tons. Mining stops. No explanation. You circle the word sacred in the margin. And then balance. You wonder if they mined not to take but to give. To fulfill an obligation. To honor a spirit contract. Once the spirit gift was exhausted or considered exhausted, they stopped. Not in ruin, but in ritual. Perhaps the cessation was the ceremony. You stand, brush off your knees. Leaves crackle underfoot. A loon calls in the distance. The lake's edge glows faintly with dawn glow. You pocket the shard again. It rests lightly now, not heavy with evidence, but heavy with question. You descend the ridge. You pass more pits, some shallow now, filled with soil and quiet weeds. Some still ring hollow. Some reveal veins peeking. You step past one shallow hole. Look inside. Grass tangled at the bottom. You half expect a reflection your face, but only green. You step deeper into forest. The trees crowd in again. You feel watched, not by people, by earth, by memory, by something older than sight. You reach the ferry landing, wait on the wood boardwalk. The lake lies still. You breathe. In, out. You feel grounded, curious, reverent. You board the ferry. The engine rumbles underfoot. The island fades in fog. You hold your copper shard. You feel lighter. You feel compelled to ask more. Not of people, but of place, of spirits, of absence. The boat pushes onward. Water curls away from hull. Each ripple echoes in empty space. You close your eyes. Memory is moving with you like water carried across miles. You step off in the mainland dock. You breathe again. Steel societal heartbeat seems distant. Cities hum in your pocket radio, yet in your bones. The island still calls you back. Or maybe something else is calling you forward. Your next destination awaits. A place shaped by earth, by ceremony, by blending of worlds. A city made of soil. A network buried beneath modern life. And you're not alone. You carry the shard. You carry questions. You carry memory. You exhale and press forward. Whispers beneath the playground. You return to Niles mid-afternoon. The sun hangs gentle over the park. A breeze drifts across grass. Children run, laugh, kick a soccer ball. Picnic blankets dot the lawn. Dogs bark at frisbees. Life is easy here, but that ease is nothing more than a surface layer. You approach the mound again. You watch the kids chase each other. Their feet push into grass that covers ancient earth. They laugh. They play. They don't know. You feel the layers beneath human hands pressed clay, shaped sand, built memory. You walk around the mound slowly. You notice how the dyes of light shift. The air feels thicker near the base. A subtle vibration in the soil not heard, but felt. A child trips at your feet. Stumbling into you, they rise, brushing dirt from their knees. They don't notice the small obsidian flake embedded in earth beneath. You bend down, pick it. It's black, sharp, polished by centuries. You trace its edges. Ancient tool, knife, arrow tip or ceremonial fragment. You place it back, gently, not taken, not moved, just return to the sleeping ground. You stand again. The mound is quiet. The laughter continues elsewhere. But here there's reverence. If you listen, you remember stories. Settlers reporting dozens of mounds some 10 or 20 feet tall. Others arranged in rings, ridges, causeways, some symmetric enough to align with the sun on solstice. Most destroyed by plough or blade, flattened to make way for roads and houses. Yet the mound beneath the playground remains. Earth holds memory. Land remembers what people forget. You sit on a nearby bench. The children's voices echo distantly. You breathe. You let the park's surface energy wash over you. But you also commune with the beneath, the silent circle of earth, where offerings once lay. You recall artifacts uncovered by historians. Mica from Appalachia, obsidian from the Rockies, copper from Royale, shells from Gulf waters. Materials not local, transported, sacred, inlaid in burial contexts. Not ordinary goods, but offerings. No one buried trash. This place was part of a wider world, a network of trade, a spiritual economy. Niles was once crossroads, a gathering space, ritual hub, an axis of spiritual geography. You close your eyes. You see people walking in procession, drums, smoke rising, voices murmuring. You hear distant chanting under modern motor hum. The world above continues, but beneath, a procession still moves in your mind. You open your eyes. A jogger jogs past, earphones in, music pounding. Unaware, you don't resent them. The world moves on, but you carry presence. You lean forward. Rest your palm flat on the side of the mound. Feel the ground beneath it from soft grass into dense earth. You sense heartbeat, faint, slow, ancient. You think of warnings you've heard. Oral traditions say that disturbing a mound can bring illness or misfortune. Some call it the earth-punishing disrespect. Others say the ancestors still guard these places. Some nights people report lights or unusual animal behavior near mounds. Others speak of dreams, visions. You breathe slowly. You whisper, "I see you." The wind lifts. A single leaf flutters off a branch. Nothing more. But the moment holds. You rise. The mound is just behind you. You step forward. You glance back once. Over your shoulder. You feel like someone is watching. Not maliciously, just present. You walk deeper into the park. You pass old map illustrations at a display board showing the original mound complexes. Now most of them are gone. Only 2 or 3 remain visible. Others under houses, parking lots, streets. The board calls them relics. You disagree. They are survivors. You find a secondary entrance near a pavilion. The grass is patchy. A few wildflowers grow in tufted rings. You pause, look closer. Could this mark a hidden lodge, a ceremonial structure once aligned with star paths? You let your finger trace the ground softly, not digging, just feeling. You leave the mound area, walking slowly among benches and pathways. The afternoon sun glints on leaves. You feel the weight of what's been lost and what persists. You exit the park, cross a quiet street, turn past storefronts into a side alley. The concrete cracks reveal faint roots below, and beneath those roots, perhaps another mound, another hidden story. You breathe in city air, sound of distant traffic, yet your heart pounds a quieter drum. You carry the memory beneath you, not burden, but awareness. That night, you sleep in a modest inn. In your suitcase, the copper shard rests. In your mind, the mound remains, the voices beneath softly stirring. You dream of circular ridges of earth, people walking in darkness toward a center fire. You dream of obsidian flashing in torchlight, of maps drawn in footsteps, not ink. You know you will wake, and you will leave. But part of you will stay here, beneath the playground, beneath the laughter. And maybe that's the point. Some stories don't need to roar. They only need someone to remember. Sleeping Bear never slept. You leave Niles before dawn. The road north widens. Fields and forests blur past. Lake Michigan cools quietly in front of you. Open water, shifting sand. You breathe deep. You carry memory toward another legend. You step onto the dunes at Sleeping Bear. Sand slips beneath your boots. Soft, warm even in morning chill. The landscape is vast, but it feels close, personal, alive. They call this place the Mother Bear Dune. But to you, it becomes more than a name. It becomes story. A story rooted in grief, devotion. Daily vigil carved in sand. You climb the first ridge. Sand drifts behind your heels. Each step lighter than thought. Wind washes across your face, salty with lake. You pause at the summit. Horizon stretches forever. Sky and water east. Forest and dune south. They say long ago, a forest fire burned through Wisconsin. A mother bear escaped across Lake Michigan. Her cubs followed. They didn't reach shore. She climbed this dune and waited. Never moved. They became islands offshore. She became the hill. Watching. You stand. Let that sink in. Let the wind whisper. Let the lake breathe memory into you. You imagine those pores sinking in sand. Pores that forever anchor grief in geography. Logic fades. Emotion rises in its place. You walk the ridge. Sand shifts softly in your steps. A breeze hums at your ankles. You breathe calm. You close your eyes. You feel the mother bear's vigil. Not sorrow, not guilt. Quiet patience. Sacred waiting. You reach a hollow. Locals call it the mother's cradle. A dip in sand at Dune's peak. You stand at its edge. The wind carries salt and memory to this low point. Some say in moonlight, you can see her silhouette, a shadowed shape at rest, and hear soft echo of Bear's cry. You stand silent now. No words, only presence. The dune holds you like a memory, soft but unwavering. You close your eyes, feel line of lake and land. You breathe slow. In, out. You move on, each step deeper into story. You pick up a handful of sand, let it fall slowly. It glitters a million tiny suns slipping into quiet gravity. Each grain a sigh, a tear, a trace of presence. You descend to a sheltered bowl beneath a ridge. Wind gathers low. Light shifts pale. You sense something vast, not lonely, but full. A snapshot of love turned into land. You find driftwood at the dune's base. You gather some, build a small fire just off the path. Sparks float upward like whispered prayers. You sit beside the flame. The sand dune behind you still watching. You hold the copper shard in your palm again. It glints faintly in firelight. You imagine combining island copper and dune grief. A ceremony of lost love and remembered sacrifice. You feel shape shifting, connection deepening. You rest as dusk falls. Sky washes lavender and rose. Lake becomes steel. Dune turns purple. Stars rise. Cool air brushes your skin. You wrap yourself in a blanket. Listen, not just to wind, but to the stillness, the mythology, the story that lives in shape and shore. You drift into sleep. In your dreams, you are that mother bear, standing at the water's edge, watching. You see shapes in dunes, hear low rumble of shifting sand, mice curling at your feet, spirits moving across dunes in pale light. You wake before dawn, the beach is silent, the sand tinged gold by sunlight. You climb to the ridge once more. The lake glows pale pink. Mist rises off water. You take a deep breath. You whisper, "I will remember." You sink barefoot into sand. The grain's warm, familiar. You feel anchored in presence, in story, in lost turn monument. You step off the dune. Path leads towards nearby forest and lakeside trail. The map in your mind pulses now between sites. Isle Royale, Niles, Sleeping Bear, but the story still flows. It's not done. You pause, look back. The dune rises, still shaped like a mother's sleep. The island shapes beyond Manitou sisters floating in lake. The mother's still watching. You exhale, you walk forward, carrying legend inside you. Your footsteps align with past footsteps. Memory becomes path, and you move onward through Michigan's living story. Wind over the dunes. You awake just before sunrise. The dunes breathe quietly in the dawn light. A chill breeze stirs the sand. You carry memory from the night half-dreams of Mother Bear. Copper and woven earth. You stand at the ridge again. Your breath meets the cold air. The lake gleams silver beneath pastel sky. Salt-tinged wind brushes your face. Sand shifts underfoot like soft applause. You close your eyes. Let the breeze hum its ancient rhythm. There's a presence here, not intense, subtle, like a soft hum deep in the marrow of the dunes. You sense that the story lives not just in legend, but in earth, in shifting grains, in wind patterns shaped by devotion. You walk slowly down the dune path. Each step is lighter than the one before. Sand sighs under your boots. You pause often, to breathe, to feel, to notice. Something in the sound of the wind changes as you move. What once was empty becomes hollowed with memory. What once was passive becomes active witness. You pause at a crest. The dune landscape stretches like waves frozen in time. A single trail of footprints leads backward. Yours. The wind erases them almost instantly. Like acknowledgement without permanence. Like grief honoring absence without erasure. You think of the Mother Bear legend. Grief turned into sand. Love turned into geography. A vigil carved by emotion. The dune doesn't sleep. It waits. Always waits. A monument soft as breath. You walk to the edge. Sand backdrops water. The Manitou Islands hover in the haze. Your vision sharpens. Those islands, they are the cubs frozen in time. Together and forever tethered to this dune land mother, you breathe again. You lift your hand, spread fingers wide. Sand leaks between. You let it fall silently, not as loss, but as offering. Each granular fall a memory acknowledged. You move along the ridge again. You follow topography like a song. Each rise and dip shaped for vigil. Erosion becomes voice. Wind becomes chant. You can almost hear voices not spoken, not audible but felt. Patterns of sorrow transformed into structure. You reach a hollow bowl. The wind funnels around you. The stillness deepens. You sit. Let sand cradle you. You sense the dune breathing under your thighs, under your palms. You close your eyes. The wind whispers names it cannot speak. The dunes shift lightly in response. Like breathing landscapes, you imagine Mother Bear watching you through unseen eyes. You breathe in slow. You think of patrols of ancient travelers, spiritual pilgrims coming here to honor memory. Maybe they brought copper. Maybe they brought songs. Maybe they offered something precious carried across great lakes, all now buried in rhythm of sand. You open your eyes. The hollow remains still. The world above returns. Birds chirp distant. Wind drops. You inhale the wide sky. Exhale gratitude. You rise. Brush sand from knees. You wander back along the ridge. Each crest smoother than the last. Each ridge shaped like vertebrae of memory. You pause occasionally. Trace patterns in dune surface. Veins of wind-blown ridges, sculpted by centuries. Each contour alive. You reach the base near treeline. Dune curves into forest edge. Shade cools your skin. The boundaries between dune and woods feel unfixed. Interwoven. Transition between grief-shaped land and life-ground land. You pick up driftwood. Collect a few sticks. You build a small fire just off the path. Flames flicker low. Sparks rise like stars briefly born. Sand breeze licks at base. The dune holds in shadows behind you. You sit close. Wrap your blanket. Hold copper shard again. Flame light glints on its tarnished surface. You imagine a ritual here. Copper laid in sand. Offerings made to one spirit. To Mother Bear spirit. Fire witness to grief. Earth to love. You breathe slow. You close your eyes. You dream of ancestors kneeling here. Songs rising across dunes. Words not in your tongue. Voices carried on wind. A ceremony of surrender. A passing to remember. You keep the silence. Let darkness gather. Stars spill across sky. The dune silhouette still stands behind you, large, unmoving, yet vigorously alive. You fall asleep. The fire dies to embers. Sand shifts gently in the wind. You dream of shapes in sand, bear shapes, wave shapes, gesture shapes, a memory mapping itself beneath eyelids. You wake before dawn. The stars fade. Lightning strands of cool pink slip over horizon. The dune glows softly. The lake breathes slow. You rise, eyes quiet, feet bare. You walk back to the ridge with silent reverence. Sand cools under your soles. Each ridge feels like vertebrae of grief and grace. You reach the summit. Stand still. You whisper into the morning wind. I hear you. The breeze lifts. A subtle hush ripples across ridges. The dune does not respond, but you feel the presence steady, calm, a reply in stillness. You draw sand beneath your fingers. You let it slip through. You whisper again. I will remember. You walk away. The dune child shadows ripple. The path curves into trees. The story continues forward. Your next step takes you toward underwater stones. Another mystery beneath Great Lakes. The wind is at your back. The dunes glisten once more. Their story etched not in rock, but in movement alone. You exhale and step forward into memory-made landscape. Beneath the waterline, you awaken early on the shore of Grand Traverse Bay. The air tastes faintly briny. Lake Michigan stretches quiet before you. No wave motion, only glass-like stillness. A mist floats low, morning light soft. You breathe deeply. You prepare your gear and board a small boat. You drift out onto the water. Each paddle stroke is quiet. The lake responds in gentle ripples. Silence deepens. The world above seems far, distant. The surface is mirror. Beneath, something waits. Your dive begins as the sun warms the water. You slip below the surface. The air leaves you. You exhale slowly. Bubbles trail upward. You feel weightless. Cold surrounds you. Light fades above. Then shapes appear. A line of stones, flat and block-shaped, spaced evenly, stretching across the lake bed, straight as an arrow, nearly 50 feet long. Too precise to be natural. Too deep for casual placement. You glide closer. You hover above the stones. They look weathered but deliberate. Some host moss and algae. Others are smooth enough to still reflect light. You feel awe. Then your gaze catches it, a large boulder etched with a shape. A mammoth, a mastodon, trunk and tusk, arched back, carved, faint but unmistakable. A creature that vanished more than 10,000 years ago. This carving, if it's genuine, you're looking at an imprint from a world even earlier than you imagined. Your heart thunders, lightheadedness sets in. You hold your breath. Time doesn't pass properly underwater. You exhale softly. The bubbles drift upward in slow arcs. You circle the boulder. Your fingers brush silt, but you don't touch the carving. You just hover. You listen with all your senses. You think of the old legend. The land was once broader. Before Lake Michigan filled this basin, humans walked here when the glacier still left marsh and meadow. Mastodons roamed. Mud, bone, stone. And someone carved this memory into rock before the water claimed it. You wonder who carved it. A hunter-gatherer clan. A ritual artist marking a kill. A visionary shaping truth into the land before it changed forever. You surface. Break through the glassy calm. Your lungs fill. Light returns. The boat still floats. Distance between worlds. You stare at the water. It's still, but you carry under it. A line of stones. A mastodon. A message from Ice Age to now. A whisper moved beneath waves. You gather your gear. Your gloves damp. Your mind sharp. You sit in the boat. The sun warms your neck. The bay reflects milky sky. You write in your journal. Alignment stones stretch like road. Mastodon carving. Human mark from before our timeline. You pause. You imagine scholars and critics. They'd call it coincidence or erosion. They'd point to shifting bedrock, to pareidolia, to glacial action. But you feel otherwise. You think of the precision, flat faces, even spacing, orientation aligned to sunrise at solstice. They say, you recall stories of underwater medicine wheels in other lands, stone alignments marking time, space, spirit. This could be Michigan's whisper from under the waves. You close your eyes. You feel water memory, cold, dark, deep past lives buried in silt. Human presence predating lakes. A story undone and partly still alive. You whisper into the quiet. Who were you? No echo, but the lake seems fuller. Warmer in acknowledgement. You float. Let your mind drift. You consider what's lost to water, what survives beneath silt. You wonder how many more messages lie unseen. You row back towards shore. The surface ripples beneath the echoes of the dive. The island forest on your left. Dune ridges behind. Mounds at your back. Now the lake with its stones below. This land is layered living memory in many forms. You land softly on muddy shore. You step out. Water drains from your boots. You carry weight, not sand, memory. You fold your wetsuit. You press jacket tighter. You gaze at the horizon. Past the shallow bay lies open lake. More mystery beyond. You walk slowly to your car. Each step feels reverent. You remember the bowman, the copper pits, the mounds, the dunes. Now this, the underwater stones. A map continued, a message in rock. You buckle into your seat. The smell of cold water and wet neoprene stays on your skin. Your journal is tucked beside you with sketches and questions. You trace the mastodon outline in your mind. You drive on, windows down. The breeze carries lake air. The route takes you inland. Your heart is full of wonder. You're drawn forward to more memories. More places where land spoke first and still speaks. Tonight you'll rest by a fire. You'll review your notes. You'll hold the copper shard and touch the mastodon sketch. You'll connect the dots, not as investigator, but as storyteller. As witness, you start the engine. The road moves beneath you. The bay recedes. The morning light stretches. And water's weight follows in undercurrents. The story beneath the waterline is only beginning. Echoes of giants. You drive inland, the bay fading behind low ridges and pine. Yet the memory of what lies beneath the waves stays alive in your mind. Lines of stones, a carved mastodon. More than nature's randomness, they feel intentional. Like an echo, carried across millennia. You park by a quiet riverside. Rustling reeds whisper secrets. You draw out your journal again. Inside, a sketch of the underwater alignment. A mastodon etched in stone. You cross your fingers. Trace the lines as if they breathe. Researchers argue. They say glacial action could have arranged the stones, or that the carving is erosion, a trick of light and time. But others whisper differently. They call to legends of giants and ancient engineers, guardians of knowledge long forgotten. You close your eyes. You inhale the river air. You breathe out the sea's silence, and something chisels into your mind. What if humans stood here before the lake rose? Hunters gorging lakeside marshes, trampling grasses tinged by ice. Campfires flickering under stars. They watched mastodons moving along the marsh. Did someone here press the life of a mastodon into stone before the glacial waters claimed it? Maybe they did. Maybe they walked these stone lines as ritual, aligning with sunrise. A hunting lane, a memory road. Maybe the perforated path underwater isn't accidental, but ceremonial. A roadmap to a world drowned, preserved under waves. You step closer to the water. The sun glints on its surface. A loon cries overhead. You listen. The loon's cry drifts like an ancient horn song. You recall Algonquian stories of giants, our ancestors' ancestors, who shaped the land and metal before people as we know them. Some say these giants built roads, dragged stones, carved in living rock. Some of these tales linger in whispers, not written, passed in dreams. You breathe again. On a nearby riverbank, you dig your fingers into the soil not to disturb but to connect. You let the earth press into your skin. You feel stillness. The axis beneath, a layered presence in the soil, rock, water. You stand beside an elder oak. Its roots trail beneath leaf litter, and maybe beneath that lie faint signs of more alignments. Another node in the network, a silent signpost. You press your palm against rough bark, whisper into the roots. I see you. The tree doesn't answer, but the ground shivers faintly at foot. You walk the riverbank slowly. The light shifts golden. Each ripple of the river glints old light. You feel giants echoing in the stones. Stories compiled not in books but in land, in water, in stone. You open your eyes. The river is still. Yet you carry beneath the surface your questions, your wonder. You think of divers' dreams, of glowing handprints in mud, of an ancient presence gesturing beneath sonar, of malfunctioning equipment. Inexplicable light flickers. You breathe slow. You place your hand over your heart. There's weight here, not pain but remembering. layers of history that don't belong in museums, belong in breath, in presence. You rise, walk back to your car, you close your journal, thoughts spin, giants, rituals, water, carvings. You tuck your coat closer as wind sharpens. You drive toward Allegan County forests. The next stop, mysterious stone rings in deep woods. Another part of the network, another whisper waiting to be heard. You exhale. The road ahead is unmarked, but memory marks the way. You carry the shard, the sketches, the dreams, the echoes of giants under the water, and you're moving forward to listen more deeply. Tonight, sleep well knowing that beneath the lakes and beneath the land, the giants still echo and you've heard their footsteps. Forest guardians. You emerge onto a winding forest road in Allegan County as twilight settles. Pine scent drifts. Humidity softens the air. There's light behind you, orange dusk, but ahead, a dense grove of pines and hardwoods. You park beside a trailhead. Your heart settles. You are finally where something hidden patiently waits. You step off the trail. The forest floor cushions your steps. Moss blankets, gnarled roots. Fallen needles hush your walking. Looming trees arch overhead, keeping secrets in their bark. Here, sound changes. The wind hushes. It's not broken quiet. It's respectful silence. You follow a rough path, defined by broken branches and gentle moss. Deeper. The canopy thickens. Bird cries retreat. Even insects dim. A hush thickens. Not eerie, but waiting with expectancy. Then it appears. Loose stones clustered in glades and ridges. A ring. A line. A circle of stones spaced evenly, many partially buried by forest detritus. Moss grows on them. They don't look imposing, but when you study them, you see subtle design. Not random. You kneel beside the ring. Stone after stone. Weathered granite. Limestone. Maybe glacial erratics, but placed, aligned, worn smooth by age. Some embedded 5 inches deep into earth. A shape at the center, a broad, flat plaza stone, heavier than most, slightly raised. It feels like an altar. You breathe in slow, you breathe out slower. You feel the imprint of placement, a circle made for proclamation, a gathering space, a meeting place, maybe spiritual, maybe astronomic, maybe both. You think of similar circles at Stonehenge, Cahokia, and the Ridge Circle right here in Michigan, all built with intention, all hidden now beneath forest and shadow, and most dismissed by academics, not artifacts. Just field stones, just old rocks, but you feel otherwise. You press your fingers along a stone's edge, rough, cold, fractured, yet still there, still waiting. You stand, step inside the circle. The stones surround you. You feel small, reverent. You close your eyes. You breathe again. Slowly, you imagine people stepping into this ring long ago, not for walking, but for ceremony, for marking sky rhythms, solstices, equinoxes, moonrises, perhaps as markers of life transitions, birth, death, naming, giving thanks. You open your eyes. Dust motes float in golden dusk light. Leaves shift slightly in breeze. The circle feels alive. You kneel toward the center stone. It's wider, flatter. Your hand hovers above, not touching yet. It invites connection. You whisper, "I'm listening." In that moment, a mild breeze sways tree branches. A leaf drifts down and lands on the altar stone surface. Not wind-blown enough to be random. A moment arranged. You wonder, but you accept it. You step back. Walk the perimeter. Count stones. Trace the circle. Feel the intention. You recall an elder's story. Stones that hum under solstice sun. Stones that vibrate when held under breath. A connection between earth, boom, and sound. You press your palm lightly against a stone. Close your eyes again. The rough surface is steady. It vibrates faintly under your palm, like history murmuring. You exhale. The feeling widens, expands in your chest. You sense roots beneath tree roots crossing ancient soil. Human-made geometry meeting natural growth. You rise. Walk outside the ring. You think, what if this ring was one of many across the land? A landscape of stone patterns connecting oral tradition. Drawing lines beneath forest canopy. You wander the slopes. Discover another linear alignment, stones pointed almost true north-south for 30 feet. Others in rows of 3 or 5 stones spaced evenly. Mathematical, spiritual, non-random. You shake your head softly. You realize this network is obscure, not because it's small, but because we stop noticing. You gather small notes in your mind. Draw mental map, circle, line, elevation, ancient frameworks hidden beneath leaves. A lone blue jay calls, then silence resumes. You walk to the edge of the glade. Light dims further. Evening deepens. You return to the circle one last time. The stones feel cooler now. You grasp your journal, sketch the ring, mark alignments, label potential celestial orientations. Write an elder's quote. Stone songs remember longer than song. Underlined twice. You close your journal. Tuck your pen inside. The wood's now dark. You use a small lantern path. The trail beckons. Onward toward Devil's Soup Bowl next. You take one final look at the forest guardians. The stones stand silent ring guardians, watching you leave. Not imposing, but persistent. You walk away between trees. The stone circle recedes in shadow, but the impression remains teeming beneath your mind. You step onto the trail. Mushroom clusters lean. Fallen pine cones. The forest breathes around you. Tonight, you'll rest near the bowl. The circles ring in memory. The journey continues. You exhale. Let the forest trail guide you deeper into Michigan's hush. The Devil's Soup Bowl. You arrive at Yankee Springs just before dusk. The surrounding woodlands are dense, darkening in the golden light. You park beside a rough gravel trail. The air feels cooler here. Forest hush thicker. Your heart slows. Something ancient waits at the end of this path. You begin the descent along a winding trail. Pine needles soften your footsteps. Moss cushions your stride. Every step deeper into forest feels like entering another realm. The birds have gone quiet. Only leaves rustle softly overhead. You reach the rim of a steep depression, 60 feet across, 6 feet deep. Smooth walls of earth fold downward. You peer over the edge. The forest seems darker inside. The air heavier. You feel it immediately, the shift of pressure, the hush of expectation. This is the Devil's Soup Bowl. They say it formed long ago when a block of glacier ice melted deep under sediment. But those who know the story speak of spiritual thresholds, places where energies gather, warnings pass through, where a line between worlds thins. You step carefully to the rim, breathe shallow, wind still. You lean forward. The forest floor drops away. Silence thickens. No birdsong, no insect hum, just silence that stretches below into darkness. You look down further. Trees grow inside the hollow but sparse. Light enters at odd angles. Shadows brighten and retreat as you breathe. There's a feeling of being watched, not by eyes, by silence, by memory lodged in soil. You climb down a side path into the depression. The air changes. Cooler, stiller, sound echoes strangely. A whisper from the ridge might seem close here. Nearby branches slight creak louder. Its subtle echo like the bowl listens back. You sit at the center. Earth slopes around you. Walls shelter. Sky framed above looks small. You breathe. In, out. Leaves drift lazily overhead. A single breeze lifts. You watch it move across soil, stirring nothing else. You record legends. Elders speaking of voices carried between worlds. Of dogs refusing to enter. Hunters claiming ground shifts beneath steps. Disorientation. Nausea. Sudden cold. Of people entering and losing memories or speech. You wonder, are they tales born of campfire exaggeration or echoes of something deeper? You close your eyes and let forest sound fill the void. Noises carry differently. Footstep, breath, soft twig fall. Everything seems magnified, or maybe it's your perception stretched. You listen for voices. You hear nothing. But stillness feels intent. A local story speaks of Elias Carter, a man who vanished in the 1890s. He was said to carve spirals and falling figures into his barn before disappearing. Later, people found matching carvings etched into a tree near the bowl. Tales say he lost himself within this formation. You don't expect to vanish, but you respect the place. You whisper softly, "I am here." The forest answers with subtle shift. Shade deepens. Leaves rustle faintly overhead. You sense acknowledgement, not invitation. You stay calm. You stay centered. You wander the bowl's floor slowly, each step soft, soil firm, no echo, but a resonance underfoot. You walk its edges, walls slope upward, forest beyond sloping ridge. Light filters through treetops like memory beams. You stand near the center again, sit, let legs stretch. You breathe slow. You hold the copper shard in your palm. It feels grounded, more dull than ever, but heavy with meaning. You trace its edges lightly. It feels familiar, safe. You whisper again, I'm listening. A breeze lifts a leaf from branch above. It drifts down, lands gently on your shin. Not random, not needed, but present. You nod to the air. You rise. Ease out of the hollow on a carved, not carved, but worn path. Moss steps marking descent you hadn't noticed before. You climb back to rim. Forest opens again. Birds timidly resume song. The normal world resumes, but you carry the bowl within, at the rim's edge. You look down one last time. A single crow flies across, shadows shift in eyes. You feel the place's quiet gravity tug at you beneath intuition. Beyond explanation, you breathe. You stand straight. Forest around exhales with you. You remember legends of energy thresholds, veil places, spiritual gates. Not supernatural, but spiritual geography. You walk back through forest, trail winding, narrow, light softening to dusk. You feel presence soften but not vanish. A thread still attaches you to the hollow. You reach your car as the last light falls. Your legs feel light and heavy at once. You drive on toward your final destination. The megaliths of Allegan County revisited, and the closure of the story at dawn. You exhale, and carry forward through memory stamped in stone and earth. The Devil's Soup Bowl remains a silence that speaks, a bowl that listens back, endings and echoes. You awake before dawn, light creeps behind pines. Your pack rests heavy with memories, bronze copper shard, journal filled with sketches and questions. You breathe in cool air. You are alone, but not lonely. Today is not an ending. It's a circle closing, a breath returning, a final step into quiet knowing. You begin by returning to the Allegan megalith circle. Night dew clings to stones, grass shimmers, the ring looks otherworldly. You step inside one last time. The stones greet you. No change, same silence, same air, but you feel different, deeper. You kneel, place a pebble in the center, an offering, not old world, but yours. A gratitude tribute, for guardianship of story, for guidance of land memory. You stand, walk out through the ring. The trail leads you south toward the road where your car waits. The journey loops. You've moved across landscape and memory, but now it feels less directional, more gentle, more grounded. You drive slowly through forests. Lights of dawn glow on leaves. Fog lifts from fields. The world breathes, quiet yet alive. You recall the bowman at Sanilac, the spirit being, the carvings etched in time. You remember fire-revealed stone, vandal scars, ceremonial revival. You recall copper pits, hammerstones, offering metals, vanished civilization. You remember island visions, underwater lines, mastodon carvings, ancestral road whispered underwater. You remember dunes shaped like a grieving mother, mounds beneath playground laughter, the soup bowl hearing silence beneath your words. You exhale. Your pulse hums in memory. Each chapter folded into your journey feels less like stops and more like stations in ritual. You feel presence shifting beneath your feet. You reach a clearing where forest meets field. Soft wind rustles grasses. You stop and stand, close your eyes. Let the entirety of the journey breathe inside you. Inhale, exhale. You sense the land answering. The story's not just told by you, but felt through you. You begin speaking aloud, softly. Thank you for voices that linger in stone, for copper whose weight became spiritual guidance, for lost giants echoing underwater, for dunes shaped by grief, for mounds that cradle memory, for stones in forest rings. Listening still, you pause. The breeze lifts, leaves stir softly, sunbeams catch on dew. The forest hums back. You continue. I am honored to witness. I carry your whispers forward. I will remember. The silence stretches. You open your eyes. Horizon has shifted. Day is fully awake. Light brightens. You step forward. Walk the field edge. Your feet echo in grass. You carry copper shard in pocket, journal in hand. You reach your car. Step inside. The engine turns quietly. Yet inside, your heart still carries forest hush. But this is not stopping. It is continuing. You drive home, but the journey extends in memory, in presence, in voice. You will share the story, in video, in voice, in soft invitation for others to listen. Not academic, not sensational, but honest, real, reflective. You think ahead, a call to viewers. Listen beneath highways to footsteps long walked beneath earth. Listen beneath lakes to stories shaped before water covered. Listen beneath sand to grief transformed to love. Listen beneath playground laughter to quiet pulses of spirit. Tonight, you may place the copper shard on your desk, open your journal, firelight flickers. You may sleep under the hum of memory, and tomorrow, you may simply breathe. You inhale, exhale. Ground beneath you, sky above you, memory inside you. This was a journey, but it's also a beginning. You turn the key, pull away. The forest behind you smiles with witness. The lake remains still at your side. The dunes ripple in breeze. The stones, the mounds, the pit they wait, patient. And you carry them forward. If you've come this far, thank you. Thank you for walking this quiet path with me through forests, across dunes, beneath the cold waters of ancient lakes. What did we find? Really, not just stones or carvings, not just the echo of copper or whispers of old spirits. We found the persistence of memory. We found that history isn't just written in books, it lives in the earth, in the way a tree bends toward light, in the hush of a bowl-shaped hill, in the tremble of a fire dream. We learned that those who came before us weren't primitive or lost. They were listeners, observers of sky and soil, builders with reverence, survivors with soul. They left us signs not for conquest, but for contemplation. And perhaps the greatest truth is this: sometimes the mystery is not meant to be solved, just witnessed. So if you've ever felt the earth hum beneath your feet, if you've ever stood in a place and sensed something older than words, maybe you're already part of this story too. Thank you, truly, for giving this story your time, for your open heart, for your curiosity. If you felt something tonight, something stir, something settle, let me know. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me which part stayed with you. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs a slow, quiet mystery tonight. Subscribe if you want more stories told like this, with breath, with soul, with warmth. And most of all, thank you. Thank you again. You didn't just listen. You remembered. And maybe now you'll carry the story forward. Good night.